welcome to another build video. We've finally got all the parts for building the Asus board, as I mentioned in the last video. So I'm just going to do a quick rundown of all the parts we're going to be putting into the system. Then we'll have a time lapse of the build, and then we'll have a review at the end. So to start off with, at the front we've got Palette GT210 1GB graphics card. Got multiple output, but we're only going to be using the VGA because of the monitor that's going on to. Cable extensions we've got, because I said we're going for the blue theme, they're all blue, so we've got a 24-pin extension, we've got a 4-pin extension for the EPS. In here we actually have some blue front panel extensions, so even the little front panel wires that come through are all going to be nice and blue to match up with the accents in the case. We've got obviously the motherboard, AM3 Plus motherboard, Asus board. We've got the Zigmatech Scorpio case that I reviewed in a previous video. We've got 4 Scirocco 120mm LED case fans, all in blue. Now because the motherboard only has one fan header on it other than the CPU fan header, we've got a 4-way fan header hub. So that'll plug onto the motherboard, nip round into the back of the case, and then all the fans will plug into that. Cooler wise, we've got an Antec A30, again with a blue LED fan on it. CPU wise, we have an AMD FX4100 3.6GB quad core CPU, nice. Storage, we've got a Kingston SSD now 300V, 60GB SSD for boot drive, and we have a WD Blue 500GB for storage. The person that this is for doesn't need a 1TB because all that's basically on their storage drive is some pictures and maybe a few documents. So 500GB will be plenty. Memory, we have 2x2GB of Corsair XMS3, and that is 1333MHz DDR3. Power supply, we have an ACE A500BR. Yes, it is ketchup and mustard, but because the only cables that we're going to see coming through to the front that would be off of the power supply are all the cable extensions. It doesn't matter because they're all going to get hid in the power supply shroud in the case. And just in case I need it for the front fans, I do have another little 2-way splitter for the front fan headers, because I don't know if the fan cables on these will be long enough to reach round to where the hub's going to be sitting inside the case. So that is all the parts. Now before we get on with the time lapse, I have done a test boot with the CPU and the memory and the motherboard and the graphics card in, and I did get into post, so I know it all works, so I haven't got to do a test boot outside of the case before I fit it all in. So without further ado, let's get on with the time lapse. Cinebench and Heaven, so we're going to run the benchmarks. I'm not expecting them to be that high, but let's see what happens. So we'll run the CPU benchmark first. This will take a while, I think. Well, it's not taken as long as I thought it would. I'm expecting a score in the low 700s for this, comparing it up against the likes of say an i5 4-core 4-thread. As you can hear, it's not exactly quiet in that PC. There are a number of fans, and they're not, say, Cooler Master or Corsair ultra quiet fans, so it could cause a bit of an issue with sound, with who the machine is for. One thing I haven't mentioned, during the build, you didn't see it in the time lapse, one of the blue fans, the motor actually failed. So the failed fan I've replaced with a clear plastic non-LED Antec 120mm fan, and I've actually put that one in the roof of the case so that we still get the effect of the blue fans in the front and the blue fan in the rear, creating the blue hue throughout the system. Obviously I would have liked to have had the blue coming down from the top as well. I have actually emailed the seller to try and get a replacement for that. Hopefully I'll be able to do the replacement before it's time to deliver the PC. So we're getting near the end of the CPU benchmark, and let's see what system we're coming or score we're coming up with. Should be another minute or so, and then we'll be getting the score. After I've run the Cinebench for the graphics as well, we'll then go and run a Heaven benchmark and see what sort of scores we get on that. We'll also see what sort of CPU temps we get. Obviously we're not seeing CPU temps on this. I'm expecting when it's under load. Right, okay, nowhere near the score I was expecting. We've got a score of 269 for the CPU, so it's right down here. Not the best score, but it is only an FX4100. It is only an AMD quad core, old gen. It's actually AM3 Plus, so don't expect it to get anything near the scores of the new AM4 Ryzens or even the i7s. It did actually beat a 1.7 2-core 4-thread i5 3317U, because that was only 214. But when we go up to the i7s, even a basic i7 scored 505, so we're not too brilliant on that. So 269 is the Cinebench for the CPU. Now let's see what it says for the graphics. Again, not expecting great results because it is only a 1 gig card. And it is a GeForce 210. So it's a really basic graphics card, but it saves having to use some of the system memory to run the graphics. So let's see what happens. Oh, it's very jerky. I've actually run this on my gaming PC and it was so smooth it was like watching an animated movie on my PC. So I can visually compare this to a more recent system, i.e. a Ryzen 5 with 16 gig of RAM and a 4 gig GTX 1050 Ti. And there is a massive difference. It's night and day, the difference in performance. But we'll see it and see what sort of score we get. So that's that. We got an average of 6.78 frames per second. Yeah, not the best in the world, but like I say, it's a basic graphics card. So right, so that's our Cinebench scores, and we will now go and run Heaven and see where we come with that. You'll notice down in the corner here I've got a little red X on the speakers. That's just because I haven't got any speakers or headphones plugged in. The sound system does actually work. I have actually checked the device manager, and there are no devices that are awaiting drivers. Come on. Right, here we go. So quality, we'll go medium to start with, and we will run. So I've got tessellation off, I've got anti-aliasing off, basically as low as I can go with all the additional items in graphics, and just got it on medium level graphics, and I'm still expecting a fairly low frame rate. Certainly wouldn't be able to play any modern AAA titles, but the person that this machine is going to, although like I said, all they really play is the games that come with Windows, such as Solitaire, etc., and online games of a similar ilk. They don't play anything that's hardcore. Right, so we are really low on FPS. We're actually got down to 3 FPS, and that's on medium. So let's just go up to, if I can even get a response from the mouse, which it doesn't look like I'm going to. So what's that? Quality. Let's go to low. Let's see if we can get it at least up to just double figures. Other thing I have to remember is this is a DX11 benchmark, whereas I think the graphics card is only DX10. So, right, we've actually managed to double our FPS, and extra. We're actually up to 7 FPS now. CPU temp is up to 47 degrees. That doesn't worry me in the slightest. Well, it's flicking between 47 and 48. That will be because we're putting load on the CPU, even though it's at low quality settings, and because it's not the best cooler in the world. The Antec A30 isn't the best. The fan speed isn't brilliant, so I'm relying on the 120mm case fans to dissipate heat out of the system. So let's just have a look at the other settings and see if there's anything else I can turn down. Right, so if I turn shadows off, right, we've actually reached the heady heights of 7 or 8 FPS. So I'm not even going to run the benchmark, because looking at those figures, it's not worth it. So we will quit out of there. So we've not had the best results on Heaven or Cinebench, but for what this machine is going to be used for, it doesn't really matter. It wasn't built as a high-end gaming machine. It was built as a workstation for web browsing, email, and playing a few small games that aren't system intensive. It's kind of overkill for what the machine is going to be used for, but at the end of the day, it's going to outlast this person's use. You know, the machine will still be going long past the time that they're going to be using it. So there we go. That is the machine up and built. This LG 19-inch widescreen monitor is actually going to be going with the PC. It's a pity I couldn't get one with a black bezel to match the PC and the person who it's going to is keyboard and mouse, but at the end of the day, they're not paying for it, so they can have to put up with it. So that's the end of the Asus build with an AMD 4100.
Just as a follow-up to the build of the Asus AM3 Plus board, I've decided to do a bit of a change up on the RAM. If you remember, I only put 4 gig of XMS3 Corsair RAM in there, and I thought it's not really enough. It's a 64-bit system. I have actually got 8 gig of Corsair Vengeance RAM here, and it's actually faster RAM because what was in there was 1333. This is 1600 RAM. So I've decided I'm going to swap it out so the machine's got 8 gig of RAM in it, because I've actually got some other 1333 DDR3 to go with this, another two 2 gig sticks, which I'm going to end up putting in the Gigabyte board that's got the 8 SATA ports. So that will still have 8 gig of RAM in it to run 64-bit, and that's basically going to run as a server, I think, because I've got so many SATA ports on it. I can put loads of hard drives on it. So yeah, we'll change the RAM over. I don't think it's going to make any difference to the benchmarks because they were basically based on CPU and GPU. It's probably just going to enhance the speed that Windows actually runs at, because it won't be using any of the SSD as page file. It'll use all RAM. So we'll get this RAM swapped over, and then we'll see how fast it boots. Now previously it was booting at about 30 seconds. So we'll get the RAM swapped in and see what difference it makes. Okay, so that was a quick swap over of the RAM. So we've taken out the two 2 gig sticks. We've now got 2 4 gig sticks in there. I'm a little bit concerned because the heat spreaders on it are quite a bit higher than the XMS3, so it may interfere with some of the air pull on the CPU cooler. It's encroaching about halfway across the side of the fan where it's sitting, but we'll see what it does with CPU temps. I'll put hardware monitor on here and we'll see what it does. Probably won't show that today, but I'll just get the system booted up. So time check, and let's see how fast it goes. It's a little bit faster getting to the splash screen for the boot. Yeah, that is significantly faster. That's now probably about a 20-25 second boot time. So it has made a difference putting the faster RAM in there. We'll just go into system properties and make sure it is showing 8 gig of RAM, which it is, showing 8 gig of RAM. It's only showing 3.98 gig usable, even though it's a 64-bit operating system, which is very strange. Unless it's not liking having that much RAM in there, because when I had the 4 gig RAM in, it was showing all 4 gig usable, because I wasn't sharing any for system RAM, any of the system RAM for graphics. That is extremely strange. Let's shut down and we'll boot into the BIOS to see if there's any reason why it will not utilise all 4 gig. If it won't utilise all 8 gig, then I will probably just swap the XMS3 back in and just leave it with 4 gig of RAM. I mean, it was still quite fast anyway with 4 gig of RAM. So it'll also, you know, free up that space in front of the CPU cooler, which I don't know if you can see it on the video there, but it is actually encroaching quite badly. Right, so system information, it's only showing 4 gig installed RAM, which is very, very strange. It's extremely strange that it will not let me have more than 4 gig. So what we're going to do, we are going to shut it down and we're going to swap the RAM back. So unfortunately this was a failure. Doesn't happen very often, but yeah, it just means that when I do the gigabyte build, I'm going to have 8 gig of RAM to stick straight in it in 2 sticks, rather than having to stick 4 sticks of 2 gig in. I'll have 2 sticks of 4 gig in that system, which will then leave expandability in that system for another 4 gig, or sorry, another 8 gig, if I can get some more Corsair Vengeance 1600 to go in that. And that'll bump that up to a 16 gig system as a server, along with I think I've got an A4 CPU to go in that, so it'll be nice and fast as well as a server 64-bit. So for now we will shut down and swap the RAM back. I'm not going to bother shooting any more video because this was a complete waste of time and a complete failure of what I actually wanted to do. But it just goes to show, if you don't try, you don't know. I should have actually read up on the specs of the motherboard. It may not accept certain types of RAM, but it's strange because they are a matched pair of RAM sticks. But there we go.
Welcome back to another video. Yet again, we're going to be looking at the Asus AM3 Plus build. You don't know if I mentioned it in the last video, but when I did the build, as I was doing the Windows install, one of the fans, the blue fans that I'd got for the case, the motor actually failed on it. The blue LEDs would still light up, but the fan wouldn't spin. I did actually have some spare clear Antec 120mm fans, so I swapped everything around and put the Antec one in the roof of the case because you couldn't really see it. I did actually contact the seller where I bought them from, and they kindly sent me a free replacement. So today what we're going to do is we're going to put the blue replacement fan back in the top of the case, where I've got that Antec one that's not LEDs. Take that out. Obviously we're going to have to take the back off. We're going to have to cut some zip ties where we've done the cable management and re-cable manage it. But then we'll get it fired up and see what it's like with all the blue LED fans in there spinning up and running perfect. And it will be a final view of what the system actually looks like, what it's going to be like when it's delivered. The delivery is actually probably going to be next month. Now the person it's going to is a bit camera shy, so I may not get them on video with the reaction, but I will try. If I do get it, then we'll post a video up of that and what their reaction is to getting this new PC. But in the meantime, we'll time lapse this because you don't really want to watch me just messing around swapping a fan. So we'll time lapse it, and then I'll get the system up and running, and we'll do some beauty shots of the system with all the fans going. AM3 Plus machine completed. This will be the last video I'll do on this, unless, like I said, I can get a reaction video when I do the delivery next month. I think you'll agree, all turned out okay. The cable management in the back wasn't the easiest, although there is that embellishment, the embossing on the actual back panel. It's still, because I used cable extensions, which put quite a bit of bulk in the back there, plus that fan hub, it actually made the cable management a little bit more difficult than it would have been. But all in all, not a bad experience building in this case. I would have preferred it if the front panel connectors were actually on the top and they weren't connected to the removable front panel, because as it was, I had to do the front fans obviously I had to take the front panel off, but I had to do the front fans before I could do any connections in the front of the car from the front panel to the motherboard. So the front fans had to be done as kind of one of the first things rather than being one of the last things I did. But all in all, not bad. I would have preferred, like I said, if it had a tempered glass side panel, it would have looked slightly better, and also the expansion port cover plate, I would have preferred if that had had a thumb screw rather than just a normal Phillips head screw in it. But other than that, I think I can take this as a recommendation. The Sigmatech Scorpio case is a relatively good case to build into. The only other one thing I'm not too pleased about, on the front panel, because it is so clear when you're looking through it, and obviously with the light coming through from the side, the actual framework behind it, I think this is a generic framework and it's an optional clear front. It does have an opening in there for a 3.5 inch drive bay, or something of that ilk, where if you've probably got a solid front with a drive bay opening in it, that's what would go in there, but you can actually see right through to that. So that's probably the only disappointing visual thing about the case, is the fact that you can see right through to the case just here. I mean, airflow is pretty good. Obviously it's been messed around with the side panel being off, but even with my hand an inch above that dust filter, I can feel the airflow, and I can feel the airflow there. Can't really feel the airflow being sucked in from the front, but obviously it is there because we're getting quite good pressure coming off the back of these fans in the front. So yeah, as always, if you like this video, please pop a like on it, hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next one.